Hello, welcome back to my truck again. I am by the English Channel in a town called Dover, UK, which is where a lot of the trucks of, of the UK come in and out for import and export. The one that was famously going to get permanently clogged up because of Brexit, and it's not happened. If you can hear the sound of the sea in the background, because that is the sound of the sea in the background. In fact, let's take this over here. I'm going to show you. I am right on the waterfront. There you go. That's the English Channel. If it was a clearer day over there, you could see France, and there's the rest of the truck stop. Up there's Dover Castle. Can't really see what you're saying. I'll spin it out. Anyway, put us back. Yes. So I said I was going to talk about supply chain. Okay, let's talk about from my personal experience as a driver. When the illness happened, I'm just going to call it the illness. I'm not going to go down the C word or even the P word much. When the illness started, I was working as a container driver and taking from containers from the port to deliveries and taking containers back to the port to be exported. Interesting thing, I wouldn't say the problem started before the lockdowns in China, but things started to get a little bit different. Now, there's been a truck driver shortage in the UK for some time. This isn't actually a new thing. This has been going on for a while. It's only become particularly acute right now. But just before things went crazy, because they did go crazy, last year, things were kind of quietening off, almost like we were coming into sort of a quiet economic period. It didn't really show too much, but sometimes we were, or the company I worked for wasn't taking on subcontractors and things like little things like that. There was still plenty of work. I could still choose my job. That wasn't a problem, but it seemed to be quietening off, and that was the end of 2019, start of 2020. The Christmas of 2019 wasn't as busy as it often is for truck drivers. Anyway, when China locked down, which they did, I think it was the end of January. Certainly by the beginning of February, China was fully locked down. I think Wuhan was locked down earlier than that. Someone can remind me at some point. I should have researched it. I know. The obviously that meant they weren't exporting. Now, so many exports come from China and that region. That started to have effects on our work before we went into lockdown here. In fact, a fair few weeks before, and towards the middle to end of February, and bear in mind it takes several weeks for a container to travel from China to Europe, depending which port it is, where it stops, and so on. So things started to go very quiet from mid to late February onwards, and by late February, my employer was pleading with all of us to take our holiday, which I did actually. I took some holiday at the end of February, early March, basically the last week before Spain locked down. The Spain locked down before we did, and of course Italy was going through it even worse than that. But my kids live in Spain, so I went down to Spain to see them, and took all of my holiday entitlement in one go. And then it went really quiet, and I was back at work by that point, but it was getting silly. I mean, we were stopping work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with nothing to do. They were still pleading with all of the remaining drivers. They furloughed the day drivers and night drivers, the trampers, OTR, if you're American, the guys who are out on the road all the time. We stayed on for a little bit longer. But eventually, I think it was by late April, May that we were furloughed. But and before that, we ended up getting taken off containers and put on supermarket work because there was no work on containers. They just wasn't coming in. And I was seeing things online on Facebook, thousands of skeleton trailers in China parked up with drivers at home because of their issue with the illness. I after I came off of furlough, I carried on there for a while, and then I came off of containers and went back onto general haulage, and now on international. And that was a different kind of setup. I mean, basically, on general haulage for the rest of 2020, it was as normal. You know, the building sites that I was delivering to, and places where we were delivering the supermarkets and so on, were pretty much back to normal. Anyway, and then it started. My understanding was at that point the container traffic started to get very irregular. So then there was a massive shortfall of container drivers, staff on the British container ports. A lot of this was put down to Brexit, but my understanding was it was happening elsewhere as well. The same thing, similar to the thing that is happening in the United States at the moment. So I understand, particularly in California and Portland, and these ports are clogged up because there's so many container ships trying to offload their cargoes. You have to excuse me. Someone at this point decided to reverse alongside me with his bleep pistol. It doesn't even know I'm making a video. If you ain't. Anyway, it's not really his fault, is it? Anyway, my understanding was things became crazy again. So it went from very quiet to the early 2020 to absolute bedlam later in 2020 when they couldn't get the ships through the ports, they couldn't get the containers off of the ports, not in the right quantities. The flow was all mucked up. Yeah, so that's a bit from my personal experience, and at a wider level, this is what it does to the supply chain when you just ram on the brakes. First of all, we've got to understand how good our supply chain has become. It's amazing. Imagine you live in some quiet little town in the Midlands of England, and it's the middle of January, and you need to go to the supermarket, and you jump in your car, and you're slip and slide in the slush and the rain and the snow, to get to your local Sainsbury's or Tesco's, and we're nothing special, normal supermarket. And you'll walk in the door, and the first thing you will see as you go through the doors are cut flowers. In January, in the Midlands of England, they don't grow there. They don't grow anywhere near there. And you walk straight past as if it's the most normal thing in the world. This is actually quite extraordinary. Cut flowers go off within days. Many other things go off within days or weeks as well. But you can go to your supermarket way out of season for any of these things, and find them and not even think about it. You're not even surprised. Everybody, if you were to go back in time to the 1850s, or for that matter, the 1950s, everybody would be amazed by this. This would be staggering. This would be beyond the finest shopping experience you would get in a high-end department store like Harrods. But I can walk to the local Morrison's here in Dover, and find fresh goods, from 5 or 6 continents. Quite extraordinary. And well, how's this happened? Well, it's happened slowly. It's happened over this is part of the reason we haven't really noticed it, but and it happens through a miracle of market forces, really, where every single product line is assessed. Right, I've got one product here, so let's take a product. This is some Heinz tomato ketchup, and let's say the supermarket here in Dover, the Morrisons, they sell 3,000 of those a month, approximately. Then they have thousands of product lines just in that one store. So thousands of supermarkets tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions across the world. But this one store, somebody looks at how much tomato ketchup they sell within a given time frame. It could be 3,000 a week in October, and it might go up and down through different points of the year. And some products might be much more seasonal, some might be more summer products. They're going to sell more ice cream in August, aren't they? Obviously, and they're going to sell more beer around the World Cup and things like this. So somebody looks at this, is fairly obvious, isn't it? You probably understand this, but somebody looks at this and they do an analysis, extrapolate from this information, and say, well, okay, well, next October we're probably going to sell the same, and we don't necessarily know why, but we do. There's no need to make a guess at it. We're just looking to look at the past numbers of sales of this one product, and we're going to order that in. Now, we don't want to order too many, because if we order too many, we just spent money we don't want to spend, and especially if it's a perishable product that's going to be past its use by date. Tomato ketchup isn't too bad. Other things like cut flowers are going to be over and done within a few days. They have to be much more careful with that. But this goes for every other part of the product as well. So the label, the bottle itself, the cap, the plastic for all the different plastics for these different things. These all had their own supply chain feeding from that supply chain. So, and somebody's doing another spreadsheet for the plastic that needed for the caps. Okay, so somebody has analysed that they're going to need millions and millions of these to a certain level of error, and we'll talk about that now, really. And we're going to adjust for that. Now, we're going to produce that much. And if we don't produce that much, obviously we've lost out, and there's going to be a shortage for the people who want it. And if we produce too much, well, we just blown all our money. What happened to the Rover car company in the UK? The reason why they went bust isn't because they were selling a small number of cars. There's lots of companies, sports car manufacturers, who sell a small number of cars. It's just that Rover had built a large number of cars. And they couldn't sell them, and you had all of those pictures. I think it's 2005 of whole fields full of unsold Rover cars, and that's what blew them up. That's why they went bust, is because they produced too much. So you don't want to produce too much, and you don't want to produce too little. Obviously, for all of these thousands of product lines, they need a margin for error. Okay, they're going to say, well, no one knows the future, but we know that last October that we sold 3,000 of these in the first week of October. So, what we might do is we might order 3,150. So, but kind of 5% wiggle room. This is your buffer stock. This is in case people, people buy a bit too, people go a bit crazy with the old tomato sauce in Dover, and they buy more, and they may sell out. It's unlikely, but you won't have too much sitting left on the shelves before the next month, and these are based on historical precedent for all of these different lines. And I'm going to say it again because this is really, 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 really important. This is across thousands of lines, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of products of all different types, and the components for those products in thousands of different retail outlets. Logistics is basically a great big number crunching exercise whereby the whole world, the whole of the retailer outlets across the world is been busy sending numbers up the supply chain in order for the supply chain to know what needs to be generated. This is what logistics is, by the way. The definition of logistics is getting the right things in the right quantity to the right place at the right time. And some people say in the right quality at the right cost. And it's being able to most accurately guess what you need, where and when, and the system has become immensely efficient, incredibly well optimized, because you make money from optimization, and it's been going on through decades with all of those thousands of people doing this, sending their information up the supply chain. The supply chain then responds to that information. Of course, there are sometimes hiccups in this. There might be a shortage of, there might be a mine that stopped producing the right ore of some kind, or there may be a political disruption in one country that disrupting. Let's say there's a problem in Zambia. Lots of the world's copper comes from Zambia. There's a disruption there. There's a disruption in anything made from copper. Then the prices go up. And of course, all of these things affect the prices of the raw materials in the background. Right. So but the system can cope with those relatively localized and minor problems, and the price mechanism kicks in, and there isn't necessarily issues, and we carry on going to the supermarket, and we carry on purchasing like we're shopping in Harrods in 1950. Now, what the system wasn't prepared for is everything stops, everything is disrupted, and this is what has happened when the lockdown started. And it's probably worth mentioning that on its own, if the illness had never left China, if China had simply stopped its economy on its own, that would have been a major problem. It didn't have to be across the entire world. And in some ways, some of the things we did as a when I say our, I mean the Western world, Europe, perhaps North America, was a reaction. It could have been a good reaction to China locking down, irrespective of what we did, irrespective of the illness. Okay, so for example, you remember what happened in lockdown? You could go to the supermarket, but you only buy essentials. You could buy food and toilet paper, and that's what's happened in. So in some ways, our reaction was not just a reaction to the illness; it was a reaction to the supply chain disruption. Anyway, and the best analogy would be, imagine you're in a pickup truck or a large car, and you have a very large container of water in the back of your vehicle, and you're speeding down the motorway 70, 80, 90 miles per hour, and you're trying to make money, perhaps, and suddenly you have to ram on the brakes, absolutely full on emergency stop, ABS going, tyres smoking, vehicle slams to a stop. You've got this big tank of water in the back. What happens next? Well, your truck, whatever, your estate car stops, okay, but the water sloshes to the front. Doesn't spill out, it's a sealed container. So you're going to fill your braking, and then it's going to stop as well because you fill that water, and then it's going to slosh back. And then you'll be sitting there rocking backwards and forwards. And if you ever driven a truck like this with liquid in the back, you would have felt things like this. And so even after you've stopped, you're not stable. Your vehicle start rocking backwards and forwards. Then what you do is you mash the gas. You absolutely accelerate as hard as you possibly can, and you make a few sharp lefts and rights as well. And this is an analogy for what's been happening in our economy. So everything stopped, the brakes ram on, okay, now we're unstable. Okay, and then there's this series of things which may be trying to be correct. You might be trying to react to this weight transfer that's going on inside your vehicle with the accelerator or the steering or whatever. But each reaction has its own equal and opposite reaction. There was a man who said something about it a long time ago. Anyway, and so this is what's happened to the world economy, and this is why the supply chain issues weren't just relegated to last year when the shutdowns happened. They've got all of these knock-on effects. Each product has had this kind of destabilizing transfer happen within it. All of those models, all of those people who are making spreadsheets about how many tomato sauce bottles we need in Morrison's in Dover, or Newbury, or Nantucket, or Washington DC, or wherever, they're all off. They're all wrong. They became wrong to a certain extent, and some things are more than others. Bread probably has probably not changed too much. Other things have had massive disruption. Then what happens is the consumer spots that, right, we especially after they come out of lockdown, and of course under lockdown, consumers weren't noticing so much, maybe not. As they come out of lockdown, they go, there's been the disruption in this and this. I'm not going to be able to get my tomato sauce. They might run out. There might be a shortage. Maybe because there's not enough caps. It may not be the tomato sauce itself. It may be the bottle and the cap. That there's a disruption. They can't push them out of the factories. Oh my goodness, my kids love having tomato sauce with their chips. Right, fries, Americans. If Americans are watching this, I mean fries when I say I'm speaking English, So then the consumers rush out and they buy lots and lots of the things before they run out, and they put them in the fridge or the cupboard or wherever. And this is the panic buying. And the system is not set up for that either. So each disruption causes its own disruption. And this is exactly what's happening with the fuel crisis in the UK. There's probably more than enough fuel, or there would be, if people hadn't gone it. The fuel is the same amount, but it's been taken from petrol station forecourt tanks and put in people's vehicle tanks. And even if you're not panic buying, you need to get some. So my truck right now has 2 full tanks of lovely Belgian diesel, because I made sure I filled up when I was over. I'm pointing because the sea's that way. When I was over in Belgium, and just out of interest, the truck stop in Calais in France was out of diesel yesterday, and the only reason, and apparently it has been for a few days, that on and off, and the only reason I can think is drivers like me and all of the other international drivers here in this truck stop go, we may not get fuel in the UK, let's make sure we fill our tanks before we go to the UK. We don't know what we're going to do when we get there. Most people do that anyway because it's cheaper, but you've got that extra agent, that extra piece of information is, I may not be able to get fuel, I better fuel up in France. So everything has a knock-on. That's a small example of the kind of knock-on effects. And this is why we're seeing such massive disruption in so many things, and it's probably not going to change. These things, it's such a big disruption, like the water in the pickup truck, like in the tank in the pickup truck. If we keep trying to correct for it, then we make it worse. The best thing you could possibly do, when you think about it, the reason why we had lockdowns is because of the illness, but it might be because of the supply chain as well. Anyway, the reason, the best way to keep your truck stable in that situation is stay stopped. Just stop. Just stay there. Okay. But we can't do that in the world's economy because everything's in debt. Okay. So this is like the bailiff. You stopped, but the bailiff is just behind you trying to catch up and is going to repossess your truck. This analogy is growing by the minute. So you can't do that. You have to try and accelerate away, and then you've got all of these effects. And this is where we are, I think. This is why we're looking at, there's other things as well, the labour shortage, and there's a whole different video to make about that. I've made other videos about the truck driver shortage. But these reverberating effects from last year's lockdown are probably what we're feeling, and it's probably not over yet.